All right, we are live. I'm gonna make sure I can see it on my phone before we get started. Um, all right, here we go. And I always have to edit the privacy. Okay, we live. All right, happy Tuesday, everybody. Today's the last Tuesday of May, and this is the last Beyond the White Couch session for this month. So I'm super excited about this conversation and my guest today. As you all know, if you've watched previous Beyond the White Couch, is me bringing to the table some of the hard conversations that we don't normally talk about in the Black community. And this month, I wanted to focus on bringing in other mental health professionals to dive into the dialogue. And so today, I'm super excited to have Nick to talk about Black women and them disrobing and all of their superwoman, all of that, and how that impacts us. So I'll let you go ahead and start and introduce yourself, and we'll get started.
All right, so I'm Nick Burnett. I am first and foremost a delicate Black woman. I yes, by profession I'm a social worker, and that is partly because as a young Black girl I witnessed a lot of dysfunction, a lot of trauma, and so that led me to the mental health field. I knew I wanted to help people, so I work as a behavioral care social worker at Prisma Health in Columbia, South Carolina, and I've been there for almost 6 years. Prior to that, I got my bachelor's in psychology, so bringing the two together. And I'm also in the process of clinical supervision for my independent licensure. And I am married to my college sweetheart. It's been going on 7 years, and we have three beautiful boys.
Yes. I want y'all to pay attention to how she introduced herself and how she did not start off with her title as a mom, a wife. We gonna get into that though, because we gonna go there. But I need to shout out to you for doing that, because a lot of times when we introduce ourselves based on our titles, and you introduce yourself as a delicate Black woman, and I think that is so critical. So look, ooh, we already into the thick of it already. Okay, so I have presented this question to everybody starting out, but mental health holds a true stigma in the Black community. Although we're starting to have more conversations and all of that, again, not as normalized as it probably should be. So, in your professional or personal opinion, or both, where do you think that derives from?
Honestly, in the Black community, I think it goes way, way back. Number one, there's that mentality that what goes on in this house or in this family stays here. And, we tend to sweep things under the rug. We didn't talk about our trauma. We didn't talk about, our issues and our problems. And so over the years, even now, those things you just pack it down and it's just being suppressed. And it started to manifest itself in many ways, especially mental illness. And so people who suffer from mental illness, they've been shunned or talked about. And I was thinking, like, when I was younger, I never heard anything about mental health or mental illness. If you saw a person that acted differently than most people, they might say, the grown-ups might say, oh, he's a little touched, or, she ain't wrapped too tight, or she ain't right. And I never heard the words depression or anxiety or bipolar. Like, we just didn't have those real conversations. And then there's this strong sense of faith in the Black community.
Mhm.
And, our ancestors, that faith is what helped them endure slavery. And
Right.
so there's still this thought that we can just pray it away. You know, you're not depressed. You're not anxious. You're not worried. You just need to pray. You just need to talk to God. Call on Jesus. And I think that's another big part of our issue. And then, there is the disparities in the Black community not having access to the resources. And so, whereas people from more privileged backgrounds, they can pay for private private practice providers. They can pay to get the best medications. Whereas a lot of us have to go to like the local mental health centers, and people are embarrassed. They're ashamed, worried about who I might run into or who they're going to go back and tell that they saw me. And so I think it's as though we see ourselves as weak or vulnerable for
Mhm.
getting help or, going to therapy, taking meds, instead of being strong for just having the courage to seek help and take care of ourselves.
Right. And I think too, and this has been something that's been common amongst the conversations of, this whole the negative connotation because whatever has, how people talk about it or what they may have been introduced to growing up, like you was like, oh, they just crazy in the head or whatever. But it starts with education. And
Yeah.
so having conversations like this, or even if you're just introducing yourself to following other mental health professionals or reading dialogue about it on Google, because Google got free information even before you even take the step to decide that you want to go. I think that lack of education definitely goes into all of what you said, whether it's the disparities or your fate. Like, it's because there's a lack of education, and we know that in our community we don't be wanting to educate ourselves on things. And so I think that's a big part of it, to just, along with what you said. And so we're focusing on Black women today. I think that it's very critical to have those conversations, especially about Black women, because we do experience a lot, and there's this conversation and dialogue that's often presented, but I think it does, like, we don't go deep enough.
Mhm.
So the idea of the strong Black woman is something that people assume as a badge of honor, and I think we've all been there, to where it's like, oh yeah, I'm a strong Black woman or
Mhm.
whatever. How do you think this hurts us in the culture and Black women as a whole?
Well, this is exactly why I opened my introduction with I am a delicate Black woman. Because if people see you carrying the load well, they assume you don't need help with it. You got it. And so I think us realizing that as women, it's okay to be soft, it's okay to be delicate, sensitive. We need love, we need nurturing. You cannot, you can't pour from an empty container. And so we need to be loved on and poured into as well, because that's what we do for everybody around us.
Right.
Um, but I had I had a good friend ask me, because I was complaining about something, and I was like, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, and run over here and run there. And this friend asked me, like, do you always have to be superwoman? And so every time now that I feel like I'm starting to overexert myself, I ask myself, do you really have to be superwoman right now? Like, can you fall back a little bit? And so my answer to that question was, you know what? No, the hell I don't. And I won't.
Mhm.
Not today. Not today. So, we gotta learn how to ask for help and be okay with not being okay. It's, you can tell people, I'm not having a good day. Maybe tomorrow. And I even had a friend reach out to me to like vent, and before she did, and she's a therapist, like, so I that might be where a little bit of bias comes in, because people, they just want to dump on you because they
Yeah.
know what we do and we got the best advice. But she's
Right.
a therapist, and she texted me before she said anything. She said, do you have the mental capacity for me to vent? And I
Hmm.
was so blown away, because us as women, we're like the glue, among our families, and we're just everything to everybody. And I was like, for her to not pick up the phone and say, well, I know Nick will listen. I know
Yeah.
Nick will have some good advice. She wanted to make sure that I was all right and I was having a good day before she just unloaded on me. So that meant so much. And us as women, we have so many odds already stacked against us. As it is, we get up and we go to these jobs that could give a damn about us.
Hmm.
We still work our asses off because we have to provide. We
Right.
come home, we take care of our kids, and we're just really expected to keep going. And I just think that because of that, people assume that we're different. We're built different and we can take it and we won't break. So
Right. And oftentimes we don't show that we break.
Right.
Right. And so
Yeah.
we this with that whole strong woman, like it's like we want people to know that, oh yeah, I can do this and I can do that and I'm gonna just keep going. And it's just like, yeah, no, like you said, being able to set those boundaries, but also understanding that you don't have to operate in that capacity 24/7 or at all. You know, at all. Like why do we feel like it's necessary for us to have to go here and do this, and then by the time you be able to sit down, it's like, all right, I gotta do it all over again.
Hmm.
I know for me, I think this may have been like at the beginning of COVID. um I had a minor stroke or a mini stroke or something like that. I don't know, but it was probably the most scariest thing that I had ever went through outside of having COVID, because I had to go in the hospital by myself. I had to not be with my kids. I was like, okay, like what is happening? And they basically told me it was stress of working and being a mom, being a part, doing all these things, following all of these guidelines, not telling people no, and feeling like I had to show up for everybody all the time. And then in that, I was neglecting myself.
Yeah.
And so that kind of leads into our next question of, we see Black women doing these things for everybody and all that. How do you think that impacts us mentally?
I think it impacts us in many ways. Just to name a few: depression, anxiety. You
Hmm.
know, we're susceptible to increased substance use, anger, resentment, so many other things. But you know, like you said, we're not getting the proper rest. We're not engaging in good self care aside from routine activities of daily living. Because some people, you ask people what you do for self care. Oh, I take a hot shower. Oh, I take a bubble bath. You gotta wash. That don't
Yeah,
count.
it don't count.
That don't count. So, but we just keep going, and sometimes it just hits you like a ton of bricks. You didn't even see it coming,
Right.
because you're neglecting yourself, and it's you can consider yourself lucky. We're lucky if we have, a mini stroke or a panic attack or,
Mm,
crying spells, and we have people we can lean on or help us get the proper, treatment or intervention that we need. But, and that helps us avoid further detriment. But there are some people that end up where I work in the psychiatric units or
mm,
even dead because,
right.
because of suicidal ideations and that uncontrollable mental illness.
And that's a dope perspective, because I never even thought about it to look at it as a benefit to even that happened to you, so you at least got a warning.
Mhm.
I've never even thought that to say, you know what, how, and I always be talking about perspectives, but so look at you calling me out. But I think that's good, because like you said, there's a lot of times where people start to neglect even paying attention. So I thankfully was paying attention to the signs and warnings for myself of what was happening to my body. It started out with an earache that would not go away, and then it continued to like progress, and I was just like, something is not right. So I was at least able to listen to my body. But I think a lot of times too with Black women, when you are moving and going and doing all of this, your body is warning you. You know that you're at that point, and then
Right.
it's like, I got to keep going,
Mhm.
and then you have people who end up suicide, or like really have like strokes and things that really like put them down, or it's harder for them to bounce back from because they're ignoring all of that, those signs. And so with you, where you work, when you, or if you have experience working with a patient who has like kind of gotten to a point of no return, typically what may be a response for what was going on, because I know as clinicians you're able to kind of dive into what, getting an understanding of how people got there. So
Mhm.
can you think of a situation where you've experienced to where somebody may have been a mom and working, or a wife or whatever, and then like what are some things that they may have given feedback on to that they got to that point?
Right. That's usually the start. it's like a, I guess it's kind of like what the way most people describe it is things just piled up. Things
Mm,
just piled up. And a lot of times you might also, they might not mention it when they talk about their stressors and their triggers, but a lot of times they end up revealing that they experience, abuse or some type of trauma, or they had some major loss in their family. But a lot of times these people have, multiple responsibilities for kids, school and feeling isolated from COVID. And the adults, a lot of people got laid off, lost their businesses, lost their homes, things like that. And so it's usually like a trickle down effect. You have one negative thing happen after the other, and you don't realize, that you might need to seek help or that you're not properly taking care of yourself until it's too late. So,
right. And I asked that question because I think a lot of times, like we said, people are not educated on what
mhm,
certain things can look like. I think going back to what we were talking about before, a lot of the issues in the mental health, like what people think mental health could look like or should look like, goes on this real dramatic scale, right? You got to have somebody who won't get out the bed every day or who's drinking and going on, when in reality it could be just you doing your day-to-day
yeah,
things,
yeah,
and you're not in a space to even understand that you're overwhelmed or things are piling up or that you don't have the space to even think
yeah,
clear.
yeah,
And those are also signs. And so be clear that how mental health shows up in everybody is going to be different, and it doesn't always have to be an extreme.
yeah,
Sometimes it could just be you don't know how to have self-care, so that means that you never learn how to manage your day-to-day.
mhm,
That, I mean, as simple as that sounds, it's a lot of people out here who really have no idea how to manage their day-to-day, and so they continue to let things pile up, and then you have cases where people, they can't handle it,
right.
and they get to a breaking point that they, now it's like, okay, how do you bounce back from that?
Yes, and that's why I'm really big on, preventative care. A
Right.
lot of times, they say if it's not broke, don't fix it. If you not having issues, you don't need to go see a doctor. But I feel like mental health is so different. You can't wait until things fall apart to put it back together. You have to, make that extra effort to make time for yourself each day. Start
Right.
telling people no, cut out anything that's just unnecessary or disturbing your peace. You might have noticed, but I've been off of social media for about 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like it's just so much negativity, and I don't want that. It just started to bother my spirit, and I had to fall back from it. Not that I was going through a crisis or anything like that, but we know that negativity over time, it can really affect your mental. And I
Right.
I decided early on, before I got to that point, to just fall back from it. Um, I quit my part time job in the ER like a year and a half ago because I noticed that my eye, I just had one eye. My eye would not stop throbbing.
Mm.
I was like, this is strange. So I got on Dr. Google. I got on Dr. Google, and it mentioned, that it could be stress induced. And I was like, yeah, I'm probably not getting a whole lot of rest. Um,
Right.
I wasn't able to go to the gym like I like to do. And so I realized, let me fall back from this because I don't want to get to the point where I'm having panic attacks. And
Right.
and I was a little bit starting to like dread going to work. Like I would be at my daytime job on Friday, knowing that I'm scheduled for the ER that Saturday night, and it was just like, I can't take this. And so like one day I literally text my husband and I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna quit the ER. And he was like, I think you should.
Yeah.
He was tired of me being gone home, going on Saturday.
Right.
But anyway, but also, being supportive. Like if you feel like that's what's best, and sometimes we don't realize that we're compromising our sanity,
Mm.
for things that aren't even that important. Like
Right.
I thought if I got a part time job, I would offset what it's gonna cost me to pursue my independent licensure. But when I started to realize how it was affecting me physically and emotionally, I said, you know, I'll just do what I have to do and just jump into it. And if it comes to the fact that I have to take a break from that for financial reasons, I will. But I'm just gonna go for it, and I did. So, and I'm still fine.
Right. And I think that that's again just just understanding like you're a real life person talking about real life situations. You have not said that, oh yeah, I couldn't get out my bed, or I was drinking every day, or I wasn't taking care of my kids, or I was locking myself in the bathroom. And I think that's so important because you're not talking about some extreme thing happening in your life for you to be aware of something's happening that is not right with me, and I need to pay attention to that. Your eyes start, and you was like, okay, this ain't something that normally happens, so let me figure out what's going on. And now that I understand that it's okay, now it's like, all right, well, no, I got to do that. And we have some people in the comments chiming in, and there's a comment that says kudos for speaking up. And like being able to just say something is wrong is huge.
Hmm.
It's huge because like you were saying, like sometimes I feel like black women feel like we are not human, and we cannot humanize ourselves by saying I am not okay, or I'm tired, or this is too much, or whatever the case may be. And it's just like, no, let's learn how to communicate, right? Let's learn how to communicate and understand that it's okay that if you're not okay, but can't nobody help you if they don't know that
Right.
something is wrong.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong. um Marcy just said, during the recovery stage, I realized I place value and worth on my ability to produce and do. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so big because a lot of times black people, black women especially, feel like especially in this society with social media and all of this, it's like we got to be doing
Mhm.
in order to be seen or heard or whatever. And it's like, no, you don't. You can just be and still be enough and still have value and worth, or whatever the case may be. But all of that is determined by how you take care of yourself and how you view yourself. Yeah, that's good. So, I'm gonna jump to the next question. And it says, we often see, people say protect black women on social media or whatever. We see that a lot. Protect black women. So from a personal or professional or both, what does that mean to you?
So, to me, the first thing I think about is, treating black women the way you would want your mother or your daughters to be treated, with respect, with kindness. We know that women in general are victims of domestic violence, rape, all types of other traumas. But we also know that when things happen to black women, it does not get the same level of exposure and attention as if it happens to somebody from a more privileged background.
Mm,
And so I feel like, we should be more protected and cared for by society and the justice system. Um, Now, I guess on a smaller scale, if you personally know a black woman and you recognize how great a job she's doing, if this is a coworker, a fellow mom, somebody in your family, tell her that, you're doing a great job. Because as much as we don't like to admit it, we question ourselves, we question our worth,
mhm.
and we need reassurance. We do.
Right.
And so also, if you know somebody, needs help them without waiting for them to ask you.
Right.
If you got somebody in your life that you love and you realize, this person, comes through for me, or this person is always there when I need them, just a small, simple gesture just to let them know that, you care and you're in their corner. And even as black women, we're responsible for uplifting each other and protecting each other. Um,
Mhm.
We shouldn't be in competition. We shouldn't be tearing each other down. We're responsible for protecting Black women as well as
Right.
women.
Yeah. And I think the other part to add to that is, what does protecting you mean?
Hmm.
Because for every person, for every woman, that could be different, right? And I think that a lot of times understanding what that looks like for you means that you have to be aware of what your needs are.
Right.
And there's a lot of times where people aren't aware of what they need. And so if somebody asks, hey, what you need or whatever, it's like they don't know what to say because you haven't taken the time to really understand what you need and how someone can help you. And so I think that when you look at, when somebody says protect Black women or whatever, it's cool that it's out there. But really break it down to say, you know what, if somebody asked me today, how do you need protecting and what does that mean for you? You really have to self-reflect on yourself to
Definitely.
be able to understand what you need from somebody. I often, like, people like to say hold space, right? They like to say it, but they don't really know what it means. But when you're holding space for somebody, from my perspective, what that means is offering what somebody needs in that moment. And so sometimes people need you just to listen, not to give an answer, not to pass judgment, not to just to listen. Because a lot of times, especially when you talk about in a therapeutic setting, a lot of people go to therapy because somebody just listens to them.
Right.
They can say what they need to say without somebody interjecting, imposing their own, what they would do, how they would feel. And I think that understanding that when you learn how to communicate, it's not just about talking. It's about listening too. And that's something that I think that as a community as a whole, we don't do a good job at, is
Mhm.
learning how to just listen. But like I said, backing up to say, please understand what you need from somebody when they ask or offer it to you, because that shows that you are treating yourself in a manner, going back to what we were talking about before, that you're being self-aware and you understand what it is that you personally need. So we have some comments. um Melissa says she's overwhelmed, she's tired, and she's tired of overextending. Girl, stop. Just stop. But being able to say it out loud is still, you recognize it. So that's step one. And I'm gonna
That's
text you.
the start. Yep. Tell the people not today.
Not today. Yeah. Not
Maybe
today.
not tomorrow either, or next week.
Right. Or next year. Well, whatever.
I'll get back to you when I'm ready.
Right. Right. And Carrie said, sometimes when you don't feel heard, finding a person that will just listen is amazing. Yeah, the power of listening is people sleep on it a lot. People sleep on it a lot, for sure. So what are some ways that you would suggest Black women to prioritize themselves?
So we touched on this a little bit, but love on yourself, engage in self-care outside of normal activities of daily living. It's cool to take a bubble bath in the dark with, the candles going and bubble bath. It's cool to do that, but we deserve so much more than that. That take washing is an activity of daily living. So I think we should challenge ourselves to think beyond that and find other outlets. If it's reading, I'm planning to get me a bicycle so I can ride my bike. That's one thing that's on my list. Um, what else? Like, music is my go-to. I feel like that just shapes whatever mood I'm in. If I'm trying to come out of it, then I can play, a certain type of music. If I'm grieving and I'm thinking about my mom, I'll put on some old school music, and then I'm back good again. And so finding those outlets, crafting, whatever. Like we just said, don't be afraid to tell people no. Don't
Mhm.
be afraid, and remind yourself, yes, no is a complete sentence. Yes, that part. We just have to, remind ourselves, just because we can do something, that don't mean we should do it. That don't mean we have to do it. like, people in my family know that I don't work on weekends. And so, they'll say, are you busy this weekend? You got anything going on? Knowing that technically I'm not busy because I don't have to work, but just because I'm not working don't mean I'm not busy. I can be busy chilling.
Right.
you know so we really have to love on ourselves in that way, find our outlets and create our boundaries. And then also, like you said, let other people know what we need. So let people know, love ourselves, and let people know how we need to be loved. Those of us in relationships, we have to communicate to our partners when we feel like, the weight isn't being equally distributed, or if we feel like they're not meeting our emotional needs. If we feel like we're not being cared for or supported by our family and our friends the way that we do for them, we need to either let them know that, or decide, what, this person is, they're draining me. They're always asking me for something, but I know I can't pick up the phone and get it from them. I'm gonna distance myself a little bit, so you might just have to move accordingly.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I wrote that down. So Rachel said, just because I'm not working doesn't mean I'm not busy. It's a whole word, and I had to write it down too, because that's a whole word in itself. Because people will definitely make give you tasks,
Yes.
regardless if they know what you got going on or whatever. And I think, too, like you were saying about self-care and doing things for yourself, when if you're not familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Mhm.
I need you to go get familiar with it and review that. And if you those are basic essentials that you need to function, right? That's not self-care, because you supposed to be doing those things, right? You're supposed to be. Now if you aren't able to do those things, it's going to be hard for you to do other things, right? And we see that a lot. I know you see that a lot with kids, and stuff like that. I know I see it a lot with youth, because it's hard for them to have sometimes to meet that. But when it comes to adults, when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, okay, that's essential. But when you're talking about self-care, I always think about what directly benefits you.
Mhm.
If I do this, how's it gonna make Sierra feel? Not how's it gonna make anybody else feel. Is it gonna make my kid? No, I don't. How does this make Sierra feel? Because sometimes just sitting in my office and just listening to the birds outside brings a peace to myself that can't nobody else give me. But that makes me present, so I know that I'm not in my head thinking about what I got to do tonight or the kid. None of that. I'm thinking about this moment, right? This moment. And so when you're practicing self-care and you're figuring out things that you want to do as it relates to self-care, think about, how does this benefit me?
Mhm.
Just you, not everybody else, just you. And understand that when you operate at your best and you're operating in your best capacity, it directly benefits everybody around you. Because going back to what we were saying at the beginning, when you start to see things pile up or you get, overwhelmed. So I use myself, I'm real big on self disclosure now. So when I get overwhelmed, or if I feel like I'm not feeling my best, I'm real snappy. Like, I'll pop off for, maybe not for no reason, but it's because I haven't probably decompressed, or there's a lot that I'm doing and I'm having to show up or whatever, and there's no way, I haven't taken a step back. So that means I'm not operating at my best. And so it's easier for me to just pop off with somebody than it would be if I was able to like decompress, clear my head, and operate in a space that I know that is Sierra at her best, right? And so again, that's all self-awareness, y'all. Self-awareness is key in all of this, and finding balance and creating balance and harmony in your life or your relationships or your friendships or whatever. Because if you're not aware of your limits or your capacity, you can't communicate. You can't. It's not possible, right? It's just not possible. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the comments. We can see those as well. um but what are your top 3 reasons that Black women should go to therapy?
Well, Number one, therapy is an outlet. Therapy is a tool, and therapy is confidential. So you have the opportunity to just unload and unpack all of your worries and frustrations, just to kind of release it so that it's not being suppressed and it doesn't manifest itself in, ways that are detrimental to our health and our well-being. Um, and then a lot of times we don't realize how badly we need something until we get it.
Mm,
And so a lot of people, they might be led to therapy because they have a loss and it's difficult to get over. Or they might have just experienced this hardship, or um, on the further end of that continuum might be experiencing, that deep depression where they can't function, can't perform their activities of daily living, things like that. But it doesn't have to take that for you to go to therapy. Like, you can use it, to just process things and, interact, I guess, kind of work through your interactions with other people. And then, like I said, therapy is confidential. So, we might have that one person that you trust and you say, "I'm coming to tell you something, but don't tell nobody else." Well, for everybody that you tell, don't tell nobody else, they probably got somebody else that they gonna say, "All right, I'm tell you, but don't you tell nobody else."
mm,
And so with the therapist, you have somebody that's gonna keep that there. You can, like you said, they can just listen. You don't have to worry about, their feedback or them, telling you that you're wrong or you should have did it this way, and that sort of thing. So um, that's like one of the true ways that you can really just like gain something without having to do a whole lot except for just communicate and say what's on your mind. Your therapist doesn't really gain a whole lot, from having people dump on them all day. Yes, it is a career, but we'll get in, the financial thing, that's a conversation for another day. But other than that, they don't really have a whole lot to gain from you. So you can go to therapy and you can be selfish. And I,
yeah.
I tell my patients all the time because they're like, "Oh, I'm just rambling." I'm like, "I'm here till 4:30. Ramble all you need to. We good."
Right.
So that's the one space where you can really like get what you need, and not you're not really like exhausting yourself,
Mm-hmm.
exerting a whole lot of extra energy and effort, and you get so much out of it, just that relief and that peace from unloading everything.
Right. And know that when you go to therapy, like, it's we've talked about this a lot, and if you listen to me a lot, therapy is no different than you finding you a physician to go to, or going to the dentist or whatever, because just like Nick said, it can be preventative care. Just like every year, your insurance be like, all right, it's time for you to get your routine checkup. Sometimes you can go to a therapist just to be like, you know what, I just need to, talk about how much I hate my job today, because you don't have anybody that you can say that to. But then that could lead to you being able to unlock doors that you didn't even know you needed to unlock. But understanding that the space between you and your therapist, that vibe can be created. So it doesn't have to be like this, let me go sit on the couch and listen to somebody like read notes and write. It doesn't have to be that. It can literally, like we having this conversation right now. That's how my conversations with my therapist go. Just like this. It's like, man, listen, let me tell you what happened this week. And it's not, well, Sierra, no, it's not that. It's literally having a conversation and processing it to where it's like, okay, let me understand how I feel and why I feel this way and all of that. And it really does break down. And when we talk about cost and all of that, the benefits to what therapy can cost outweighs what you're gonna pay for it,
Definitely.
right? It's an investment into yourself for sure. And so even when you're thinking about it, or you're not sure if that's something that you want to do, just think of it in that way. It's an investment in yourself, and I promise you, like, I've met nobody yet that hasn't had a maybe their experience maybe wasn't the best, because sometimes you may have to try a few to get what you need, right? But I haven't met anybody who hasn't gained something from it. Just like Nick said, you gain so much from it. And I love what you said about this is your, like, it's a space for you to be completely selfish. Like, it's 100% about you. 100%. And name another place where where that happens. Please tell me where else in the world can you go somewhere and for an hour, 50 minutes if you want to be technical. How, what is it? Where? Cuz I don't know. I don't know other place where you get 100% it's just about you. So if you have reservations about it, so if you know somebody who's on the fence, what would you tell somebody who's on the fence about it?
If you're on the fence and you think you need help, it's because you know you need help. You need help. You just
Right.
need to go ahead and hop on over. Just hop on over to the other side. No, but seriously, I know the process to secure like professional it can be frustrating because it's like, where do I start? How do I locate these people? And then you get this big list, and it's like, okay, how am I gonna know which one of these people is gonna be a good fit? And so it's a process, and so a lot of people like back off of it because they're like, no, that's I feel overwhelmed, but trying to find somebody to process these feelings of being overwhelmed is overwhelming, and they just back off of it. And so um I usually encourage people to explore Psychology Today
Mhm.
because you can narrow your search based on, where you live, based on your insurance, if you want a male or female. You can even put in ethnicities on there. Some people are big on, having somebody that looks like them or comes from a similar background as them as far as like, gender and sexuality. And that's okay because if you're really like sharing your personal and your deepest thoughts, sometimes you might not always want advice, but sometimes you might need somebody to, ask the right questions to get you to thinking and exploring, those solutions. And so a lot of times somebody that don't come from the same background as you or have the same belief system as you, they might not quite be able to help you the same, but you can literally go on that website and narrow it down. And everybody might not be a good fit. Like you said, sometimes it might take a few, but that's okay. Just don't give up in that process. And also your insurance companies, if you have private insurance, they want to take private and public, they want to take care of you. And so you can call the number on the back of your card and say, hey, I need a therapist. I live in this zip code. And literally they will connect you with somebody that they can either give you a whole exhaustive list, or you might tell them, give me the first three people that live closest to my house, whatever you need. Like, there are people that can help you. Don't get discouraged in that process. And then even people who have no insurance, um, every county in South Carolina has a designated Department of Mental Health Center where
Mhm.
you can receive services at, low cost based on a sliding scale. So it's for anybody that's on the fence, it's really not no excuse. If you don't get what you need, I mean, you really don't have. It's really nobody you can blame.
But you.
Nobody but you. Just
Right.
over.
Right. And understand, like you said, I think that the process of looking for a therapist can be overwhelming. But if you are going into it with this expectation of you're going to find what's in your head, maybe that's not going to be it. You have to be open to possibilities, right? But like, do your research. Like, don't just jump into the first person that you see. It's like, oh yeah, like, do it. Like, and a lot of times you have providers who have a free consultation, so you can
Mhm.
talk to them before you actually decide that you want to utilize their service and all that. And like, take advantage of that, because you can definitely check somebody's vibe before you actually decide that, you know what, yeah, let me go sit down and spill my whole life to them. But it's beneficial for you to just kind of do your research, because the process of therapy is it can be a hard one, right? It could be a hard one, especially if you've never been before. But it's also one of the most rewarding processes, I think, too, as well. And so just don't allow the excuses of like time, because I see that as a big one, or money as the reason why you don't go, because like Nick said, there's resources available in, if most, not all, um areas to where you can find somebody who can work, you know, with you on that. And then be careful of who you trust in.
Yeah.
I think that we live in a time where a lot of people think that they've overcome their own something, and that worked for them, and now they're using that to be a coach or this and that. And everybody ain't qualified to do that. I'm gonna leave it there because that's definitely a conversation for another day. But everybody isn't qualified to do that, and just keep that in mind as well. Psychology Today only promotes people who are legit, right? They're valid people. So just like I said, just thoroughly do your research in what people are doing, and going into that um space with people. But if we don't have any questions, Carrie said she cried in her consultation. Girl, that's a blessing. Okay.
Right?
That's a
Yeah.
blessing, because you didn't even get into the in the thick of it yet. And that was, that was it. So oh, Rachel said happy belated
Thank
birthday.
you, Rachel.
But how can people follow you as you go on this journey that you're going on into private practice? If they want to connect with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I'm Nick Burnett on Facebook. On Instagram, I'm fortified with the number four, underscore R underscore E underscore D. And I can be emailed. That's nicolette.burnett@gmail.com. But yeah, like feel free to message me. I do not mind. I get messages from people I don't even know, like asking questions about mental health resources and real life situations. And I'm always happy to help. And of course, once I'm practicing on my own, I'll be sure to post that on social media and let Sierra know so we can let people know that they have other options in the Columbia area.
Yeah. And make sure you just stay tuned to, I know that I'm wrapping up mental health awareness month and the May with Beyond the White Couches, but it doesn't stop here, because I have some ideas and things, and we've talked about some things too. And but the conversation of mental health and people getting help, especially in the Black community and especially with Black women, is education first.
Mhm.
Education first. And so if you're not familiar with my platform with Recycle Energy and Beyond the White Couch, get familiar. There's a lot of dope things happening with that, just again with the educational piece of things. So follow her, follow me, stay tuned. We definitely appreciate everybody who has engaged tonight in the conversation. Share it and tag somebody else who may need to listen and get this information as well. I definitely believe in spreading the word and being able to just have more dialogues like this, because it makes it that much easier the next time trying to get people to engage in conversation and go get help, or just even talk about it in general, whether you decide to go to therapy or not. Just even having the conversation, I think, is really big as well. So Again, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Tag and share this with somebody else. And then Beyond the White Couch will be back soon. I'm not next week, but it'll be back. It'll be back soon. So y'all have a good night.
Good night. Thank you so much for having me, Sierra.
You're welcome.
Take care.